Hi, welcome to Trauma Talk podcast. I'm your host, Freya Hickman, and today I am thrilled to welcome Sharon Livermore MBE. Sharon is a domestic abuse survivor, avid campaigner and trainer raising domestic abuse awareness and educating organisations of all sizes and sectors. Determined to use her personal experiences and voice to educate and empower others, Sharon started educating businesses through her existing company Cameo Recruitment. In 2023, she founded Domestic Abuse Education because of the great need and demand for education around abuse within the business sector and wanted a dedicated channel through which to realise her mission. In addition, Sharon has created Sharon's Policy, a free template for workplaces so they can implement a domestic abuse policy. She's also an ambassador for both the Domestic Abuse Alliance and Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse. Sharon made the New Year's Honours List in 2024 and was awarded an MBE for her services to survivors of domestic abuse, presented by the Princess Royal. And her now amazing husband and two incredible children were there to share her special day at Windsor Castle. Sharon, thank you for making the time to have a chat, and I'm really excited to talk to you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to obviously be on here with you, so thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. So if we can talk a little bit about your story and your background and how
Absolutely.
you came, what it was that you experienced that led you to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I nearly lost my life, in all honesty, in 2015 at the hands of my then husband to domestic abuse. For me, it wasn't like I'd lived with him for 20 years. It was a 4-year period, shall we say. And I met this man when I was on a sales course with work, with my other hat on, my recruitment hat. And he was the person in the room that was pouring the glasses of water, you know, really charming, really friendly. Everyone was like, yeah, this man's amazing. Obviously, you start relationships with people. And at first it was, I guess for me, the tick box of what I thought a relationship should be. There was flowers and chocolates and, you know, hotels and all of those things. And of course, there were some signs on the run up to our wedding, but I brushed them under the carpet. You know, I was like, oh, it'll be fine once we get married. And it was actually on our wedding day that things really changed. It was that evening because obviously control was there. In his mind, the control was there. I was married to him. So I lived through 18 months of what I would call pure hell, in all honesty, experiencing every form of abuse apart from economic abuse. And it got to a point where I'd lost my identity. I'd lost my friends, my family, just everything about me. I didn't know who I was. And I just hit that wall where I went, I can't do this anymore. It was my children that were keeping me going. If I didn't have them, I don't know. But I got to the point where I went, enough is enough. I'm done. So obviously I went to the police, tried to get him prosecuted. It was 2015, so coercive control was only just coming in as a law change, but I didn't have any physical bruising on me at that point. He was bailed, and then what happened from that point was I continued to work because that was my safe space, that was my routine, that was what was keeping me going as well. And I went to court, must have been 4 or 5 days afterwards in my lunch hour, to put an injunction through. And when I came back, the office manager came with me. So, you know, we went together, which was really supportive. We got into our cars after work and we worked in what I would call a beautiful place. It was a converted barn. So as you can imagine, absolutely beautiful. But outside it was very dark. It was November as well. So we walked, like I say, to our cars, got in our vehicles. Now, my car was newer than my colleagues. So we'd get in, start the engines, and her car would take longer to demist than mine. But that evening, my car was really, really misted up inside. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, this is a bit strange, you know, but strange was what I thought. That was all that went through my mind at that point. And so I looked behind me and I thought, oh, thank goodness, you know, he's not in my seat like a horror film. And then I went to drive away and I thought, no, hang on, I can smell aftershave. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. You know, your sixth sense of your body when you're going through something traumatic. I just thought, no, this isn't right. So I put my hand behind me like this in the, you know, footwell of my vehicle behind me. And I felt my picnic blanket. Now that picnic blanket had been in the boot of my car because I have OCD. So everything is exactly where it needs to be. So At that point, it was a bit of a blur. I think obviously it was the situation, but I opened the door, walked round to the back of the car. Don't really know what I was expecting to find, but I lifted the boot up, and in the boot was my husband, or then husband, should I say, with knives and cable ties. I managed to flee and run, and fortunately, one of the ladies I worked with and two gentlemen came out. He did get me. I went to the floor, but because of timing, thankfully, and the braveness of the people that were there, he then fled off in my vehicle. But what he'd done was spent 3 days plotting what would have been my kidnapper murder. He'd gone to my home and ankle grinded through the door to steal my spare car key. At no point did he think, this isn't right. Why am I doing this? He drove what was 45 minutes drive from my house to where I worked. So again, nothing was there where he was going, what am I doing? Parked up his vehicle, got into the boot of my car. It was a hatchback, so he'd loosened the seats. And in all honesty, if I'd have driven off in that car, I wouldn't be here speaking with you today. So I totally appreciate my story is traumatic for people to listen to, but it is my reality of what happened. And I think when I realised afterwards that how fortunate I am to be here with one woman every 5 days that now is unfortunately losing their life to domestic abuse, I just realised that I wanted to do more. And I guess that's where my drive and passion comes from in being able to work with businesses.
Gosh, yes, thank you so much for sharing, Sharon, and just an unbelievable experience to have gone through. And like you said, so lucky that you are still here with us and able to do
Absolutely.
what you're doing now and helping others, educating businesses and organisations so that they can help to spot the signs of someone who might be going through domestic
Yeah.
abuse, and so that they might be able to get help and support.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about what it was like in the kind of days and weeks afterwards, in terms of what you went
Yeah.
through and
Um,
realizing what had happened and how you started to recover or kind of move forward?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question because I get asked this all the time. How are you where you are? I think for me, I knew it wasn't my fault. So that's the hardest thing, I think, especially in abusive relationships. If people believe it's their fault, they may have been being told it's their fault for however many years. They've lost their confidence, etc. I knew it wasn't my fault, so I didn't have to get over that hurdle. I knew it was on him. So initially, I guess when he first obviously got arrested, the relief that was there when I first found out that they'd managed to capture him. But then, strangely enough, I went into sympathy for him because I was like, oh my gosh, is he okay? Is everything okay? And they were like, why are you worried about him? And I was like, and that's when the penny really dropped, how much I've been manipulated because I'm asking about the person that was going to take my life, if they're okay. And I think it was like an epiphany moment where I went, what am I doing? Like, why am I asking this? So it did take me a good few weeks, if not longer, to kind of realize that he had what was coming to him. It was his fault on that side of things. I think for me personally, what I realized is how much I like routine because I was not having my routine changed. Even the next day after it happened, I went to the police station that night. Obviously, I was there for hours. I then went and stayed at my office manager's house. Unfortunately for me, my children were looked after. And I went back to work the next morning with a police car outside as an
Wow.
escort to make sure that I was okay. But I was like, I'm not going to work because if you take my routine away, I knew in myself that I would crash completely, and rightfully so. I was entitled to, but
Yeah.
I also knew my coping mechanisms throughout the whole time of living with him was having my routine and my work space. So I wasn't ready for that to be taken away. And I think that was something that probably shocked my workplace because they were like, why are you here? Go home. And I was like, I don't want to. I actually don't want to go home because home was not my safe space. Work was my safe space. So it was really hard because I think a lot of my friends and family, when they found out what happened, there was guilt from that side. I think my dad really struggled with it because I was his little girl and, why did I not
Of
see it? Why
course.
did I not help? But I was like, you don't know because I wasn't showing you because I was trying to hide as much as possible. So I think there was that side of things. I think then after that point of kind of going through the adrenaline was there for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks while I was processing it. I think probably about a month after was when, yeah, it probably was about a month because it was when we had our Christmas party and I really wanted to go. And part of me is like, I'm going and I'm wearing a dress that I want to wear and I'm having my hair done how I want to regain my control. But I remember inside feeling so drained and so tired, but pushing myself to do those things almost as a tick box of things that I wasn't allowed to do. And the biggest thing, which is probably going to sound really strange, but I wasn't allowed to listen to certain types of music. Now I like R&B music, that's my thing. I like garage music because I'm back from the garage days, and I wasn't allowed to listen to any of that. So I remember literally the day after I went to Tesco's. This was back when CDs were in thing, not Spotify. And I went in Tesco's and I literally went and brought 6 or 7 CDs just because I could put them on. So all of these things that probably to others, they're like, what's she doing? I went and got my hair dyed back as well because my hair was dark brown. He wouldn't let me have blonde hair. So I went and got my blonde hair put back in, which looked a bit like a zebra, in all honesty, for the first few times because I had really dark hair. But I insisted to the hairdresser, just get some blonde back in it. So I think I worked with myself as well to work out what I needed to re-find myself, if that doesn't sound too cheesy.
No.
Yeah, and I guess you probably understand that as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a very different
Yeah,
experience, but it's kind of around trying to reclaim yourself and rediscover who you
absolutely.
are and the things that you enjoy, and kind of trying to regain that, especially for you, that control over your life,
Yeah,
so that you feel like, actually, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, these are the things that I
yeah,
enjoy, this is what I want to look like, these are the things I want to go out and do, the friends I
yeah,
have, what I want to go and see, and and just kind of be able to start having fun again. And obviously all of those things can take quite some time, but
yes.
it definitely doesn't happen overnight, and I'm sure that
No.
probably wasn't the case for you either, but kind of like bit by bit.
Yeah, it
And
is the steps, like you say. You're 100% right with that. It's those steps. You don't turn from the person that you've been molded into back to, because I'm not the person I was before either. I think that's something which people don't understand. They're
yeah,
like, well, you just went back to you. And I was like, no, I didn't. No,
no,
I'm not that same person. Actually, I am much more confident than I ever was because I've regained the control. I guess for me, my purpose, I have a purpose that, again, I think you'll probably understand. That's my drive. I know what I'm here to do and I know what I want to do. And there is nobody on this planet now that is going to stop me doing what I want to do,
yeah,
because that's my mission, and I think, so without sounding wrong, I am grateful in a very strange way of what I went through, because I'm also grateful that I have the strength now to do what I do, because I know there's so many people that don't have the strength and will never have that strength that I'm campaigning for. And I know there are people that are grateful for that, because I have conversations with people that say, keep doing what you're doing, because I couldn't. And I don't know where that strength comes from, but I'd like to think it's down to my friends and family who I've all, managed to get them all back into my life. And now my amazing husband, who is my biggest champion, who, if I need to do stuff, he'll cover for me with my youngest son, all of these things. And I think you have a different view of life. Well, I know I definitely do compared to
yeah.
before. It was more material things. Before I worked in recruitment, I was commission based, so I'm a salesperson at heart. So I was always chasing that money because I wanted the
Yeah.
latest this, the latest that. And of course, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like nice things, but I don't have to have nice things now. And I'm grateful for the things that I've got. And I think, yeah, without going through these experiences, would
Yeah,
I be as grateful now? Sides to it as well.
I think it's like you said as well. You can't go back to the person who you were before, but
Yes.
you integrate that experience and you learn from that experience.
Yeah.
And like you said, you wouldn't be the person who you are today without having had that. And so, as awful as and horrendous as that experience was, you've used it to turn your life and you into who you are, and the life that you're living today, and that is an incredibly beautiful
Yeah.
thing. So and you
Thank
should
you.
be really proud of all of the strength and resilience that you have, regardless of
Thank
where that
you.
comes from.
Yeah.
But it sounds as though your friends and family have been a huge support to you on
Yeah.
this journey.
Yeah, I think, the thing is, I know not everyone has friends and family around them. So, people that are listening, you can recover without that. But I think for me personally, my best friend was my biggest supporter, and actually my perpetrator cut her off from my life. He blocked her phone in her number in my phone, and over time we didn't see each other. And it was actually her at the end that called me at work and went, "Why are you not talking to me?" And I said, "What do you mean? You've not been responding?" And then she taught me how to look in my phone, because I'm not very good with tech, to see that he blocked the number. And I think being able to have that really open and honest conversation, because obviously people's first reaction was, well, why didn't you leave as soon as you saw a sign, or why did you stay? And I'm like, that's not helpful. Like, that's not helpful. I was manipulated. So although most of my family were good, there were some that weren't as supportive as others. And I get it. People do have their own opinions. So I guess I surrounded myself in the people that weren't judging, that were allowing me to talk in my own time, that were doing their best to understand, and give me what I needed. And they were asking me, like, what do you want? Do you want to go out? Do you not want to go out? What do you want to do? And I think that gave me the space to process, because time is a really good healer. You never forget what happens to you. There will always be triggers throughout your life. I think if you deny yourself of that, that's when you come up against it, and it's actually a lot worse. Whereas I appreciate that my life is different to others. I do have to look over my shoulder. I do assess every place I go in to look for exits, and that's just my day to day. But I'm also happy with that because I'm alive, So you kind of have to weigh it up with both things, don't you? But friends and family are really, really important. But I think any trauma you go through, it's about getting the right friends and family. I think that's so important. That can really, almost without sounding wrong, add value to what you're going through and support you in how you need to be supported, not what they're telling you need. Because yeah, there was obviously different views for me. Have some time off work. No, I don't want to. I want to go back to work. Well, I want to be at work, and then you've got to look after yourself. But that is me looking after myself. And straight away, as quick as I could, I was back out there with my friends, going out, and yeah, just exploring who I was, which it is scary. But now when I'm speaking to people that are going through it, I've spoken to a number of people that have just come out of it and said, can I have a call? Of course, I don't work in frontline support services, and I have to make that clear. But I have lived experience. So I will have, as long as someone's in a safe space, a conversation. And what I've told a lot of these people is, in your diary for the next month, write down 1 or 2 things that you weren't allowed to do, that you want to do, or something that you want to change. And it's little things like, well, when did you last see your friends? Well, ages ago. Okay, well, can you ask one of them to go for a coffee with you? Well, I don't think they'll want to, because I didn't see them for 2 years because they were cut from my life. Well, have you explained that to them? Can you just even send them a little WhatsApp or a text or even a phone call and say, look, this is what's happened. I really miss you. And I appreciate you probably felt like I cut you off from my life with no reason, but this was the reason. I'd love the chance to have a coffee with you. And I said, you'll be surprised. Your friends will come back if they're true friends. And yeah, this was just one survivor I was working with. And then there was the other thing that she wanted to do. She wasn't allowed to wear skirts. And I was like, go buy a skirt. There's your 2 things. And it works because it wasn't huge milestones. It was, like, as you said before, those little tangible things that we can do.
Yeah, and those little tangible things all start to add up, and over
Yeah.
time you'll realize that you can do more of them without probably thinking about it, and actually that becomes part of then who you are,
Yeah.
and you can see your friends more, you can wear more of the things that you want, and you
Yeah.
can do more of the things that you want to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said as well, in terms of having the right family and friends around you, and having people who can give you that safe space to talk and
Yeah.
listen non-judgmentally, and all of those things are so incredibly important. And I think it can be really easy to expect family and friends to be able to do that, but the reality is also
Yes.
that not everyone is. But if they're not able to give you what you need in that moment, that there will be other people who can give you what you need in
Yeah.
that moment. And if family and friends aren't maybe the ones to support you, then you can also seek professional help through potentially your GP, There's lots of specialist charities out there who work with people with domestic abuse, or obviously counselling services
Yeah.
as well. And it's going to be different for everyone as to what helps them get through and find their way on that journey.
Yeah, and I think 100%. I echo exactly what you're saying there. For me, I didn't have the traditional counselling or anything like that from external support services. I was able to do it with processing from my friends and the ones I selected, and kind of built my own journey and my education now. Every time I deliver and I train and educate others, that's still part of my healing process, because I know that I'm changing lives and stopping others from going through what I did. So, and that will continue. I don't think that'll ever stop. Every time I do a session, it's tiring because I use my lived experience. Of course it is. It's not easy. People say to me, how can you keep sharing your story and re-traumatizing? I said, but it's not for me re-traumatizing, because I know how to process those emotions. But with my story, I can help educate others and help bring the sessions to life. And I think, that's the thing. It's finding your individual path, and there is no path that's right for everybody. There really isn't. And like you say, the external support services, the counsellors, obviously, your app, the Remind app, is absolutely fantastic. And there's so many different tools, and it's about building up your own toolkit effectively of what you need and when you need it. I know even now when I do sessions, if I get anxiety. I'm someone that's lived with anxiety even before I went through this. So, for me, mine's all related to hormones and things, and my sleep. So I know that I need to have my sleep every day, which obviously everyone does, but a certain amount of sleep. So I think, you learn what triggers you over time. You learn what even like things like with females as well, without saying awful, hormones. Time of the month, I'm much more anxious when I'm not at other times. So again, I know that if I'm doing sessions and around that time, I know I need to be a bit more kind to myself, because I know that it's going to be extra triggering because of my hormones. So, but that's part of your journey. I think that's part of you, and being kind to yourself as well, because the more you kind of beat yourself up internally, you're never going to get over that trauma. So almost finding a way, and you'll probably be better to talk about this than me, in releasing that trauma, that energy that comes with that trauma, in whichever way you find that works for you.
Absolutely. In terms of being kind to yourself, and that can
Yeah,
be such a difficult thing to do sometimes, but giving yourself the space and compassion
yeah,
to do those, bits and pieces of self-care, and give yourself the extra time and space that you need to process things. And like you said, it can, I think, be a bit of trial and error sometimes in terms of learning the things that are helpful and the things that aren't. And if you get it wrong one day, again, like, you
yeah,
don't want to be beating yourself up for it. And I think it can be really difficult when you're in that space where you maybe feel like you're not worthy almost of giving yourself that time and space, and actually
yeah,
you deserve, you don't deserve help and support, and you don't feel like you're worth looking after yourself, but actually you are worth the support. People do care about you, people do love you, and you also can love yourself and to give
yeah.
yourself all those things as well. And it's about trying to build it all into your routine. And like you said, make allowances for times of the month or just different
Yeah,
times that when things come up in life
in
that
general.
actually will make it easier for you.
Yeah, and I think, just where you touched on that, actually, I wanted to bring up, obviously, for me, my perpetrator was released from prison the beginning of last year, all through a process, but into mainstream society. And I think for me, I'm working in the domestic abuse space. I've got my family and my friends, and everything was going smoothly. And then all of a sudden I was like, yeah, I'm okay. But when you get that phone call to say he's been released into mainstream society, it was literally, I just didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, actually, I don't know how to process this. And it was actually, in all honesty, probably harder at that point, because people saw what I went through at the time. No one saw, you know, 8 years down the line what was going on, because there was nothing for them to see. But in my brain, in my space, everything could just go on, like as if someone had just ripped up the whole book that I've been writing and just gone and thrown it up in the air in a very quick time, shall we say. So I think for me, it was getting that phone call that made me realise, do you know what? you need to be able to make those decisions even long down the line. So I drove home in daylight. So for 2 weeks, I was driving home in daylight. I was leaving work at like 3:30, 3:45. I didn't have to ask anybody because I run the business. But imagine if I did. Imagine if I went to somebody new and said, this happened 8 years ago, but actually I need to go home and I'm not sure how long I need to go home for in daylight. Would they be accommodating? I don't know. That's obviously where my education comes in, because we are creating cultures and workplaces where people can talk about this. But it just made me really realise that trauma can really be triggered a lot further down the line. And those feelings of fear were the same feelings that I had on the night that it happened. And I think that was actually quite scary for me, because I was like, hang on, how do I process this? And what I did was really put all my effort into my domestic abuse courses, and I got one of them accredited because I was like, I need to put my energy into it. So I'm going to spend every minute that I've got without thinking about that. I'm going to turn this into a positive. Let's make these, the course that I do accredited and make even more of a difference. But that was my coping mechanism, which may be very different to somebody else's.
Yeah, and it goes back to finding the coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
work for you, and your coping mechanisms probably a bit different to my coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
and they take time to figure out. And like you said, things can happen much further down the line,
Yes.
like a long time after your event or experiences, that do suddenly bring up all of these feelings and emotions,
Yeah.
and you suddenly feel like it's either is or is about to happen all over again, and it puts you straight back in that
Yeah.
like fight, flight, fawn, freeze mode,
Yeah.
and just triggers all of that. And then the question is, how you can get yourself through it, and how you can and obviously one of the things that you just mentioned that you did was to kind of throw yourself into your education. So can you
Yeah.
share for everyone more about domestic abuse education and the work that
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, absolutely. So my efforts go into domestic abuse education, and what I do under that banner is I work with organisations, predominantly across the UK, but also across the globe, in educating them on domestic abuse, the forms it takes, because people like to think they know, but until you've had the education, there's so many different tactics that a perpetrator can use. And we then talk about what it is we're looking for. So the signs that we're looking for in our colleagues in the workplace. Really, really importantly, I talk about how it doesn't discriminate. So we talk through statistics around how it impacts both men and women, different genders, LGBTQ plus community, and different cultures and backgrounds. Really, really important. Once we've kind of gone over that bit, why is it a workplace issue? Because 75% of people that experience domestic abuse will experience it in the workplace. And that could be via emails, via mobile phones. It could be the perpetrator turning up at the workplace. But then also there's a financial cost. So £7,245 is the cost per survivor on lost output. So, there is a financial impact on a business as well. But then moving forwards, once we know about the signs, how do we start a conversation? Because that's really, really hard to do, because people think it's a private matter. It's absolutely not. We need to make it our business, but to do that is quite hard. And then once we have had that conversation, how do we refer to support services? Because the job of an organisation any size is not to save somebody. It is to refer them to the specialist support services that have got the knowledge to be able to give them the correct advice at the correct time. So yeah, it's working. It is educating people across the UK and further afield. And I guess for me, putting my energy into creating the CPD course. So that one's a slightly longer one. It's around 2 hours, maybe a bit longer, depending on how many questions I get in the session. But that one, everyone does get the accreditation as well. And then I do lunch and learn sessions for all employees. So the purpose is that everyone's educated. It doesn't work if you just got senior management educated, because it'll be the person sitting next to them that will spot the signs. It's not the management, for example. So yeah, I guess for me, it is part of my healing process, but it's changing lives at the same time. But I will always wobble. I think trauma will always impact me. And when you were touching on it a minute ago, I just suddenly had a thought that I was going to mention. The aftershave that he wore when I was in the car. It's not a really common one, but I remember a few years ago I was walking through a shopping centre and I smelt it, and that was it. That fear again, and I wasn't expecting it. It was a lovely sunny day. It was a Saturday. I was out shopping, buying myself some new clothes. And I remember just thinking, wow, that feeling that goes over you, It's scary, right? It's really scary because you feel like you've lost control in that moment. And I think, everyone needs different ways of processing that. And of course, for me, I spoke to my friend, I processed it and was like, and she was like, look, it's, think about it logically, step by step. And that's what worked for me. But I think, don't be afraid to reach out to support services. Don't be afraid to use apps like Remind or, other apps that are on the market for different things, not just for trauma. There are other apps that can work to help you feel slightly better. Like Hollyguard is one which is very good. They're obviously a safety app, but having that as another tool can
Yeah.
help you because it's building this whole, as we said before, response yourself that works for you. And if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to change it as well. I think that's the thing. If someone signs up to something, I've had survivors that I've signed up to one form of counselling for them, then they've come back a few weeks later and gone, I really don't think this is for me. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Well, if you've tried it and it's not for you, why don't you try something different? Why don't you try this instead? So don't be afraid to go, yeah, this isn't working.
Yeah, I think it can be really hard when you desperately want something to
Yes.
work and you desperately want that help and that source of support, and then it doesn't
Yeah.
work for you. But like you said, there are so many things out there that you can try,
Yeah.
that actually it's important to keep going and try the next thing on the list that actually might
Yes.
suit you better. And it is about building up that toolkit in order
Yeah.
to help you find the things that you can process, and complete. Well, it is things like smells and sounds and things that can be completely subconscious that can take you right back to those moments.
Yes. Yeah.
And those are the things actually that not everybody does understand or,
No.
can relate to.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting analogy actually in terms of if you think about the happiest moments of your life, you can probably remember sounds and smells about them. Um,
Yes.
but actually, if you then flip that on its head, and that's kind of more what trauma is like in terms of the sound and the smell reminding you of the worst moment of your life instead. And that is kind a little
Yes.
bit of an insight into what it can be like when you are triggered by something. But it's for that exact reason that, or that's part of the reason why the work that you do is so important in educating people around the signs of domestic abuse and
Yeah.
the impact that it can have on people is really crucial in order to build cultures in the workplace so that people can have that understanding and we can have those conversations. Because how many people did you say it was in the workplace that are, or just in general, impacted?
So, in general, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience domestic abuse. In the workplace, 75% of people that experience domestic abuse will experience it in the workplace. So, there's huge stats, but I think trauma really needs to be understood across all areas, not just domestic abuse. Trauma is something that goes with so many different life experiences as well. And I think, we need to be talking about it because that trauma response to whether it be domestic abuse, whether it be a different situation, maybe grief, divorce causes trauma. All of these things cause trauma. And workplaces need to understand that just because you don't live at work, but you spend a lot of your time at work, and when you are at work, your employee well-being should be top priority. So we need to be talking about this in all aspects as well. But it does work. I think if we can create cultures where it's not seen as a taboo subject, it's not seen as, well, why aren't you okay? More like, what can we do to help you? What do you need? That's what we need to be changing the conversation to. And I honestly think in the long term, it will make happier workplaces. And actually, if people want to do it for the profit or loss or, to make that money, it will make a business more money if we look after our employees. Because when we traumatise in whatever way that is, we don't work our best. We don't perform our best. Our interest in it probably isn't there as well as it should be. So, if we look at it like that, the businesses need to do something for whatever reason they choose, whether it be well-being or financial, they need to be doing something.
Yeah, it's super important that businesses pick up this conversation. And like you said, the question should be, how can I help? Because there
Yes.
are going to be people, whether they've been through domestic abuse or divorce or miscarriage, baby loss, road traffic collisions. There are so many different things that can be affecting people. And
Yeah.
actually, for lots of people, they might be using or going to work as kind of an escape for what is actually happening to them and using it as a distraction, but their
Yes.
performance, can still really be impacted, and they might not be showing up as their usual kind of bubbly selves. And having that conversation in a safe way and safe environment might give somebody the opportunity to open up for the first time.
But I think
Yeah,
the bottom line for both of us in what we're saying is the workplace can really make a difference to these people, and
exactly.
they have a duty of care to do so.
Yes.
And we're not talking major changes, we're not talking thousands and thousands of pounds to be spent on these things, but just even if it's small things that people can do, they
Yeah.
can really make a difference. And it takes everyone to collaborate, share best practice, make it easier for potentially the smaller businesses that don't have as much funding, to almost copy and follow suit from people that do, but then tweak it to what works for them. And I guess, for me, that's where Sharon's policy comes in play. The guidance that we've created there through the policy can be adapted based on an individual business of any size and with any budget. So, there really isn't an excuse not to be taking this further and supporting employees.
And Sharon's policy is so brilliant for that purpose that it gives
Yes,
organisations a starting point. So there's no excuse really.
absolutely.
They don't have to think about it. They can download the policy for free, and it gives them a starting point, and then they can adapt it to what they need. And we can't finish this conversation without me asking you how it was going to be awarded your MBE at Windsor Castle for all of your brilliant work. So thoroughly
Um,
deserved.
Thank you. It was surreal. I think that's probably one of the words that I would use. I think throughout the whole day, it was so emotional because obviously the work I do, yes, it's because of what I've been through. But to be recognised for the difference I'm making, I get emotional now when I think about it. If I start
Yeah.
sobbing on it, but no, I think for me it was just amazing to be able to have my husband and my two eldest children who have obviously lived through it with me. There was a really special moment. They are incredible in their own right. Obviously, my son now is a White Ribbon ambassador, and my daughter is an Ask Me ambassador for Women's Aid in their spare time. And they really champion what I do. So that's when we talk about family. I think probably my children are my biggest supporters. I should say that. But I think, going there and standing in front of the Princess Royal was just incredible. And I can speak, Freya, I can speak to people. I'm confident in my own right, but my legs went like jelly. I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh no, please don't pass out. Because I was thinking, remember to breathe. And I was kind of starstruck. So there's me looking up at her because they stand slightly higher. And what really struck me was, she said to me, oh, they call your name up and you go through the process. And she said, oh, and yours was for domestic abuse. I said, yes. And then she started reeling off all this information about my policy. So you have a policy. And I thought, how are you even remembering this? But it was really, really incredible. It was a lovely conversation. Very short, of course, because you're on that, that process going through. But yeah, I still don't think it's sunk in. I think, I'm one of these people that is grateful to be here, and to be recognised for it was incredible. It is opening doors. It is starting more conversations, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. Obviously, Kaylee put me forward for it, which was amazing, who works with me. And I think when I found out, that was the first thing I thought, can we open more doors with using the MBE to get more businesses to get the training and become aware? So it is working for that purpose. But I think it's something that is that pinch me moment that I'll probably have for the rest of my life.
Today, and huge congratulations.
Thank you.
Thoroughly deserved award, and I hope it does continue to open lots of doors for you. And I'm sure that you're going to continue to do amazing work. Before we just finish up, do you have any kind of final tips or pieces of information that you would like to share or touch on about anything for anyone going through it or recently kind of come out of a situation, or workplaces as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to you for giving me this platform to obviously speak and reach more people. So if you're a workplace that's listening, absolutely, you have a duty of care. And I appreciate time is precious and people are pushed, but you can really make a difference with, a small amount of time. It doesn't take We're not changing the world with this. The policy is there, so that doesn't need to be created, and the training is there just to be delivered as well. So please do reach out to me to have a conversation. And if you are somebody that's going through it right now, I know how bleak it looks. I know how tough it can be living through an abusive relationship. What I also know is that you can get help, and there are people out there that will help you at every part of that journey. It is the scariest part, of course it is, and please do not leave without getting support, because you need to be safe. That's statistically when you're most in danger. That was when I was in danger. But do reach out to those around you. Do reach out to people that you can. And if work is your only safe space, do reach out to the workplace. And if they need to talk to me to see how they can support, then absolutely. But what we need to be doing is getting any of you that have gone through it to live abuse-free lives, because that's what you all deserve. So you can do it, and you know it's not easy, like I say. So it's not me sitting here preaching from the other side saying go do it, it's easy, because I know it's not, but I also know you can do it. And those that are obviously survivors and further down the line with their journey, they may be experiencing post-separation abuse still. If you are, you can still get support for that. And if you are someone that's completely out of it, there's no abuse, but you're still being traumatized, again, remember, it's okay to feel that way. I think that's the biggest thing. It's okay to be re-triggered. It's okay to have these feelings, but be kind to yourself and reach out to those people that can help you process those in whichever way works for you as well. So I guess the message from me is for employers, yeah, you have a duty of care. And for victim survivors, you are amazing people and you can do whatever you need to do. But don't be shy to reach out, because people will help you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank
It
you.
has been absolutely wonderful to chat to you, and I'm sure this conversation and having you on is going to have helped so many people, and that lots of workplaces definitely will be interested in helping in any way that they can. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. Trauma Talk is where we have candid conversations about trauma, the impact on our mental health and recovery. It's my sincere hope that these conversations help to break down the stigma, improve understanding around trauma and recovery, and help you to feel less alone. We will always include content warnings in our show notes so that you can see what topics we're covering. But if at any point in time you're finding what we're saying difficult to hear, then by all means feel free to skip ahead or just turn off. If you enjoy the podcast episodes, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review, because your feedback will help us to reach so many more listeners who might also benefit from these conversations. We'd love to hear if there are any particular topics that you'd like us to cover. Please get in touch to let us know. And remember, trauma recovery is a journey, and everyone's journey looks different. We're honoured to be part of yours. I think that's about it for today. See you soon on Trauma Talk, the podcast.